The greatest of all time debate is finally over. Lionel Messi recently turned down the opportunity to keep playing against Ronaldo, and to me, that's a clear admission of defeat. Relax, that was a joke. But in case you missed it, Lionel Messi was reportedly offered between $1.2 and $1.6 billion. Yes, that's billion with a B, to play for the Saudi soccer team Al Hilal. Yes, I'm American. It feels weird saying football. Now, most people were under the assumption that Lionel Messi was going to take the Saudi deal because his preferred team, Barcelona, the team he wanted to go to, wasn't really in a position financially to take him back. But on June 7th, Messi shocked the entire world and announced that he's joining Inter Miami, the team with the worst record in the MLS right now. So Miami must have offered more money, right? Nope. Miami got creative. Now, the details aren't finalized yet, but here's what it looks like based on what the insiders are saying. So the first thing is the MLS had to make a salary exception for Messi. He'll be getting paid somewhere between 125 and 150 million for 2.5 years. To keep the math simple, let's just say it's $50 million a year. Number two, he gets a percentage of Inter Miami shirt sales. Number three, he gets a percentage of sales from Apple's MLS season pass. And number four, he gets an option to buy ownership in the club after he retires. There's been a lot of coverage on why the Messi deal is actually really good. And, it's unprecedented for a player to actually have this kind of deal. And so I'm not going to beat a dead horse. But in this video, what I want to do is really take a look at what would have happened if he went to Saudi? What was the upside from a brand and business perspective if he had taken the Saudi deal? Well, the first thing I want to talk about is that everyone is saying that this deal is unprecedented and, it's incredible for Messi. And this is the best upside that Messi has. And I think that's true, right? I'm on that side, but I also want to say that the Saudi deal is also unprecedented, right? When's the last time you heard of a soccer player making $1 billion, right? 400 up to $550 million a year based on the different reports, right? So to put that in perspective, Messi's team, Inter Miami, the team that he's joining, is now worth $600 million after Messi's move, right? Messi had the Messi effect and, everything is worth more. The ticket sales went up 1,000%, right? Everything is just more expensive. Everything is worth more because Messi's there. So after his move, the club is worth $600 million. If Messi had taken the Saudi offer, he could buy Inter Miami twice over just on salary alone, cold hard cash. That is absolutely wild. That's ridiculous. And Miami is just one example. With 1.2 billion or 1.6 billion, whatever the final number ended up actually being, there's a number of clubs he could have bought with that money. Second thing I want to talk about is the possibility of another Messi versus Ronaldo era. Now, after Ronaldo left La Liga and he went to Juventus, there weren't really many matchups where he actually got to face Messi head to head again. Of course, they were able to face each other in the World Cup. But really, now that Ronaldo's in Saudi and Messi is in the United States, it's very unlikely that they're going to run into each other in any level of competition outside of the World Cup again. And so had Messi taken this deal, it would have been another 2 or 3 years of Messi and Ronaldo getting to face each other 2-3 times a year. From a sports perspective, it's always good to have an enemy. Your fans can rally behind you towards pushing you towards, giving you energy towards fighting that enemy. And so if Messi had went to the Saudi League, he would have this common enemy in Ronaldo, which has been his enemy for, years and years and years. This debate has always gone, for the last 10, 15 years has been going on, who's better, Messi or Ronaldo. And so for another 2 years, all the fans would be getting behind either Ronaldo or Messi. And for both of their brands, it would actually help them. And also for the Saudi League in general, it would bring a lot more attention to the actual competition that's happening in the leagues. People would be keeping track of, who's in the tables, who's doing well, who's going to finish first in the standings. Is it Messi's team? Is it Ronaldo's team? And so there'd be a lot more buzz that's generated just by virtue of both of them being in the same league. And the third thing, you guys have probably seen this in the news, there's a lot of talks about other big name players from other European clubs going to Saudi, right? And so to start with, we have Karim Benzema, N'Golo Kante. There's a number of people that are in talks from Chelsea, from other big European clubs. And so what that does is, number one, it brings more attention to the Saudi League. More people will actually tune into the Saudi League. But also, there's also have been talks that now people are going to follow Messi and go to the MLS. Now, I think one thing to note here is that the MLS actually had to make a salary cap exception to get Messi on board and make it possible for him to come and get paid the way, such a player of his stature should get paid, right? And so for MLS, I think it's a little bit far-fetched to see other big name players coming at the same level that they're coming at Saudi, right? Saudi is just throwing money at these guys. And so it's hard to compete when you have these restrictions. And so either the MLS is going to have to actually change the salary cap restrictions and, start throwing money at players if they really want to level up the competition and get other big players, or these players are just going to keep going to Saudi. And so in the long run, I think there's actually a good possibility that the Saudi league will start being more competitive and more interesting than the MLS. Now, let's see what happens with Messi. A lot of these players that end up going to the MLS, there's a big splash in the beginning, right? We can talk about David Beckham. We had Zlatan, Thierry Henry, right? Like there's a number of players that were big names in the European leagues, and they came to MLS. They had a big splash in the very beginning, and then people forget about it. It's not really a big deal after a year, 2 years. No one's really watching those matches at the same level as like the European teams. And so the way around that, and the way to actually make sure that the interest stays sustained, is to have a really competitive league with other big names. And Saudi is throwing money at these players and is able to really get a lot of players interested. Whereas the MLS has these salary cap restrictions where I just think it's a little bit harder to get the same big names to commit to the MLS. So the last thing I want to touch on is that a lot of people talk about the United States and the opportunity to actually have a number of brand sponsorships and work with other brands that are in the United States for Messi. And I think that's a valid point. And, that's one of the reasons why a lot of athletes come to the United States. You see in basketball, that's one of the reasons why people are attracted to the Los Angeles Lakers. You get to be in LA, work with all these different brands, get sponsorships, that kind of thing. But we see Saudi right now is in rehabilitation mode, brand image rehabilitation mode. That means like across the world, they're trying to change their image and how they're perceived globally. One of the reasons for that is that they're trying to host the World Cup in 2030, but also, for other reasons where they're building these, giant cities and they want people to come. They want Saudi to transition from an oil economy to a tourist destination spot. And so Messi would have had the opportunity to actually be one of the main brand ambassadors for a lot of these projects, or like these cities that they're building. And so there's a lot of sponsorship opportunity that he would have had there too. And putting Messi and the brand of Messi, and also, of course, you have Ronaldo on some of these projects will definitely bring visitors and definitely bring tourists to the area. And so what we see with this whole Messi deal is that it's really not black and white. I think it's really hard to say that, categorically speaking, this MLS deal is a better deal for Messi. I think it's a better deal for his family and for the quality of life and, for where he wants to be. Like Messi already had property in Miami. He vacationed there regularly. So it makes sense for Messi, and Miami has its own pull to it, right? Like we see a lot of big athletes that actually end up coming from wherever they are to Miami.
It's time for them to stop chewing. The answer to the question everybody wants to know. LeBron, what's your decision?
In this fall, man, this is very tough. In this fall, I'm going to take my talents to South Beach and join the Miami Heat.
That being said, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how this all plays out. I'm really looking forward to see, number one, what the actual deal details are, like what percentage that Apple's willing to give, what percentage the MLS is willing to give, and what percentage Adidas is willing to give, and how much that actually ends up being for Messi, right? After a year or 2 years, how much he actually ends up making, if it ends up being more than what he would have made at Saudi, or if it ends up being less. The other thing I'm interested to see is if this interest is actually sustained. Are we going to see, just like David Beckham and Zlatan, or like, is it just going to be a temporary blip of interest in the MLS? Or are we going to see a sustained interest and sustained more and more viewership of the MLS? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and make sure to subscribe for more analysis videos like this one.